Hi everyone, it's me, Melodia. Welcome to my special bedtime story hideout. Tonight I have the most magical summer stories just for you. They're about cute animal friends having super fun adventures in the sunshine. These stories are extra special because they'll help you fall asleep with happy dreams about summer fun. Oh, before we start our dreamy adventure, could you please tap that subscribe button with your finger? Points down, it's like telling YouTube we're best friends. And then I can share more magical stories with lots of children. Now, let's get all cozy-wozy. Snuggle under your covers like this, and let your body relax completely as I tell you about Bunnies at the Water Park by Alicia Ainsley. Are you ready? Here we go. On a bright, breezy Wednesday, Birdie and Bobby Bunny could hardly contain their excitement. Today was finally the day they'd visit the Lazy Lagoon Water Park. Ever since spotting the colorful posters, they had been practicing their swimming skills diligently at their local pool. Butterfly strokes, doggy paddles, and backstrokes, all in eager preparation. The little bunnies carefully packed their swimming bags with everything they'd need: swimming costumes, goggles, fluffy towels, and just in case, a pair of inflatable armbands. With their preparations complete, they set off for the adventure they'd been dreaming of for weeks. As they approached the massive entrance doors, Bobby's eyes widened with wonder. "I'm so excited, Birdie! Look! You can see the top of the Niagara Falls flume from here." Birdie followed Bobby's pointing paw and spotted the tallest slide towering above the park. The joyful laughter and delighted squeals of visitors drifted over the gates, making the bunnies even more eager to join the fun. After paying for their tickets and receiving bright yellow wristbands, they hopped through the gates and into the water park. Both bunnies gasped in unison at the magnificent sight before them, a true watery wonderland brimming with vibrant colors and sparkling turquoise pools stretching as far as their eyes could see. "Where do we even begin?" Bobby wondered aloud, completely awestruck by all the attractions. Birdie glanced around thoughtfully. "I think we should start by getting changed in the changing rooms. Then we can head straight for those amazing water slides." The excited bunnies hopped to the changing rooms and soon emerged in their swimming costumes with goggles perched atop their heads. After securing their belongings in a locker, Bobby hesitated before closing the door. "I think I'll wear the armbands to start with," he admitted. "I'm still not completely confident with my butterfly stroke, and I'd feel safer with a little extra help staying afloat." Birdie kindly helped Bobby inflate the armbands and secure them on his upper arms. With everything ready, they headed eagerly toward the slides, their eyes growing wider at the impressive array of options before them. There was a tall and steep Niagara Falls flume, the winding water snake slide that coiled around itself a dozen times, a beaver raft ride where friends could share an inflatable raft, and a mermaid multi-racer with 4 separate bumpy lanes for friendly racing competitions. Every slide finished with a refreshing splash into a cool pool of water. "Which one shall we try first?" Bobby asked, his eyes sparkling with excitement. Birdie pointed confidently to the water snake slide. "That one. I'll race you to the top." Just as the eager bunnies were about to dash off, they noticed a tall lifeguard chair beside one of the swimming pools. Sitting there was a polar bear wearing a bright red lifeguard hat with a whistle around her neck and a megaphone in her paw for making announcements. Birdie and Bobby smiled and waved at the lifeguard, who cheerfully waved back, "Good day, little bunnies," the polar bear called down. "Looking forward to a fun day at the water park." The bunnies nodded enthusiastically, explaining they planned to try all the slides first. "Wonderful! You'll have a splendid time," the lifeguard replied warmly. "Just remember to follow the safety rules." She pointed to a large sign that read, "No running, hopping, slithering, or fast crawling in the water park." Thanking the lifeguard, Birdie and Bobby carefully made their way to the water slides, moving slowly on the wet floor as advised. They climbed the stairs to the water snake slide and patiently waited their turn as each creature took their slide down one by one. When Birdie's turn came, he sat down on the platform at the top of the slide tunnel, his fluffy tail tickled by the rushing water flowing beneath him. The lifeguard, a green-headed duck, began the countdown. 3, 2, 1, go! The duck announced. Birdie pushed himself forward with a grin, letting the stream of water carry him down. "Whee!" he exclaimed as he whooshed through the spiraling coils of the water snake slide. The pace was perfect, fast enough to be thrilling yet smooth enough to feel relaxing. Around and around he went, the tunnel twisting like a snake coiling around itself, until finally, Birdie spotted daylight at the end of the tunnel. With a magnificent splash, he shot out into the pool below. Birdie giggled with delight as cool water washed over his fur, droplets sparkling on his whiskers. He turned to look up at the slide's entrance, waving enthusiastically to Bobby, who was watching from above. Bobby gazed down at his friend's joy-filled face and waved back nervously. When his turn came, he sat down on the platform, waiting for the lifeguard's signal. 3, 2, 1, go! But Bobby remained frozen in place. The stream of water splashed against his furry feet as he stared down the winding tunnel. It suddenly seemed very long and intimidating. "Are you okay?" the lifeguard asked kindly. Bobby nodded, but his expression revealed his true feelings. He was nervous. Standing up again, he peered over the edge to see Birdie waiting patiently at the bottom. "Come on, Bobby," Birdie called encouragingly. "You can do it. It's so much fun." Taking a deep breath, Bobby counted to 5 in his head for courage. He could do this. Sitting back down on the slide, he received an understanding nod from the lifeguard. "Whenever you're ready," the duck said gently. Bobby adjusted his armbands, secured his goggles over his eyes, took another deep breath, and finally pushed himself forward into the tunnel. "Wahoo!" he cried as he sped down the water slide. It was even more exhilarating than he had imagined. His fuzzy body whizzed around the coils until he reached the bottom, where Birdie was waiting with a big smile. Birdie cheered as Bobby splashed into the pool, and Bobby burst into happy laughter. "That was amazing," Bobby declared. "Let's go again." The bunnies joyfully returned to the top of the water snake slide for another round before moving on to explore the other attractions. They raced each other down the mermaid multi-racer and shared a raft on the beaver raft ride. Only Birdie was brave enough to try the towering Niagara Falls flume. Bobby watched from below, cheering enthusiastically as his thrill-seeking friend plummeted at breathtaking speed down the park's tallest water slide. When Birdie emerged at the bottom, he was completely drenched, his goggles filled with water. Shaking out his goggles, Birdie accepted Bobby's applause for his bravery. "That was brilliant, Birdie," Bobby congratulated him. "Maybe one day I'll be brave enough to ride that slide too." Birdie smiled warmly at his friend. I'm sure you will. But for now, shall we go relax in the wave pool? I'm feeling a bit tired after all that excitement. Bobby nodded eagerly, and the two friends headed to a more peaceful area of the water park. The wave pool welcomed them with gentle, lapping waters. Other creatures were already enjoying themselves there, floating on their backs and letting the peaceful bobbing waves carry them along. Birdie and Bobby followed their example, lying back to gaze at the sky while the soothing sounds of water filled their ears, blocking out everything else. The gentle waves lifted their small bodies up and down in a calming rhythm. Ah, Bobby sighed contentedly. This is definitely more relaxing than the water slides. I could stay here all day. Birdie, barely hearing through the water in his ears, murmured in agreement. You can't stay here all day, an unfamiliar voice suddenly announced. Have you tried the surfing simulator yet? That ride is the best. The bunnies sat up straight in the water to find themselves face to face with a sleek dolphin, who bobbed effortlessly beside them. What's a surfing simulator? Bobby asked curiously. The dolphin's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm as she explained. It's a special kind of swimming pool that creates big waves for surfing. You stand on a surfboard and try to keep your balance while the waves rush at you. It's perfect practice for real-life surfing. Birdie's long ears twitched with interest. This sounded fascinating. Have you ever been surfing for real? He asked the dolphin. The dolphin rolled her eyes playfully. All the time. I especially love riding the waves around Hawaii. Some of the most beautiful, bluest waters I've ever seen, she added with a grin. Though I don't need a surfboard, I just use my smooth tummy to glide along. Birdie turned excitedly to Bobby. Should we try finding this surfing simulator next? Bobby, lazily bobbing in the wave pool, replied dreamily. I feel like I'm already surfing waves right here. The dolphin giggled. No way, little bun. The waves on the simulator are way better than these tiny ripples. After enjoying a few more peaceful minutes in the wave pool, the bunnies climbed out and set off to find the surfing simulator. As they hopped through the water park, they passed various swimming pools with sprinklers, waterfalls, and all sorts of fun games. There truly was something for everyone. Along the way, they spotted snack stands and ice cream shops where visitors could refresh themselves. Feeling a bit thirsty after all their adventures, Birdie and Bobby decided to buy a bottle of water and a refreshing ice lolly each. With their treats finished, they continued their search for the surfing simulator. But suddenly, something unexpected caught their eye. Bobby stopped in his tracks and gasped. Birdie, he whispered excitedly. Look over there, it's Barbie the bunny-corn. Sure enough, standing majestically by the water fountain was the Lazy Lagoon Water Park's famous mascot, Barbie the bunny-corn. Barbie was a truly magnificent sight to behold. Standing tall with her aqua blue fur glistening in the sunlight, she was no ordinary bunny. Between her two floppy ears protruded a shimmering silver horn that caught the light with every movement, and behind her swayed a sparkly, fluffy rabbit's tail. Being the only bunny-corn in existence, Barbie had naturally become something of a celebrity. And who better to serve as the water park's beloved mascot? Today, she was greeting visitors and posing for photographs, hopping excitedly as children and adults alike waited for their turn. Can we go say hi to Barbie the bunnycorn, please? Bobby begged, tugging at Birdie's arm. Birdie glanced at the long line of guests waiting to meet her and grimaced. He was eager to try the surfing simulator, and the wait looked considerable. Can we meet her after we've tried surfing? The line is really long, Birdie suggested hopefully. Bobby's ears drooped slightly. But she might not be here when we come back, he replied, disappointment evident in his voice. Please, Birdie, please. Looking again at the line, Birdie noticed how the faces of waiting guests shone with the same excitement that lit up Bobby's eyes. He couldn't bear to disappoint his friend. All right then, Birdie agreed with a smile. Let's get in line. Bobby leapt with joy and bounced toward the back of the queue, barely containing his excitement as they inched forward. When their turn finally came, Bobby froze, suddenly starstruck in the presence of the famous bunnycorn. Fortunately, Barbie was well practiced in dealing with awestruck fans. Good day, fellows, she greeted them warmly. How lovely to see some bunny friends at the park today. Though Barbie was only half bunny, she possessed the sweet temperament characteristic of their kind. Birdie liked her immediately, while Bobby could only stutter and smile shyly. It's nice to meet you, Birdie said, introducing himself and Bobby. My friend here is a big fan, that's why he's a bit nervous. Barbie flashed a dazzling buck-toothed smile. It's always wonderful to meet a fan, but there's no need to be nervous. I'm just an animal like you. Would you like to take a picture together? Bobby nodded enthusiastically, still unable to speak. The bunnies positioned themselves on either side of the tall, blue bunnycorn and posed as the camera flashed, capturing their delighted expressions forever. After thanking the kind bunnycorn and waving goodbye, they headed to the photo desk to view their picture on the big screen. Bobby's wide-eyed grin was the biggest Birdie had ever seen, making him giggle at his friend's excitement. Shall we buy a copy? Birdie suggested. The little bunnies happily purchased a keyring with their photo inside. I think you should keep it, Birdie offered. You'll treasure it more than me. Bobby gratefully accepted the gift, knowing he would cherish it for years to come. Was Bobby's special moment complete? It was time for Birdie's turn to enjoy his much-anticipated activity, the surfing simulator. They found it in the center of the park, quite different from the other attractions. It was a small, shallow pool designed for one visitor at a time, featuring a lone surfboard that creatures took turns riding. Birdie and Bobby watched as various animals tried their skill, first a jolly orange-beaked puffin, then a black bear, followed by a tiny newt. Creatures of all sizes were eager to test their surfing abilities while rolling waves splashed beneath the board. Some began by lying on their stomachs, while others bravely stood straight away. From the sidelines, spectators watched, some waiting patiently for their turn, others simply enjoying the show. Birdie could hardly wait for his chance. He observed each surfer carefully, noting that the most successful stood sideways with arms extended for balance. By the time Birdie's turn arrived, he had collected valuable tips. The little bunny approached the surfboard while Bobby cheered from the sidelines. Positioning his large bunny feet sideways on the board, Birdie extended his arms in preparation. As the waves began rolling in, he took a deep breath through his nose and focused intently. The surfboard tilted and rocked with each wave, and Birdie worked hard to maintain his balance. The crowd's encouraging cheers boosted his confidence. If he ever wanted to ride the magnificent Hawaiian waves like the dolphin had described, Birdie knew he needed to master this simulator first. The determined bunny adjusted his posture as he navigated the artificial waves, surprised to find surfing easier than anticipated. When his turn ended, spectators applauded his performance. Birdie grinned from ear to ear, immensely proud of staying upright throughout his session. Bobby waved excitedly, declaring he wanted to try next. Seeing his friend's success had inspired Bobby to be brave and attempt surfing too. The bunny friends rejoined the line, eager for another turn. They enjoyed the surfing simulator so much that they took several turns each, rushing back to the queue after each session. By the time they decided they'd had enough surfing for one day, both bunnies felt confident they could tackle the real waves of Hawaii on their next adventure. Was their surfing practice complete? Birdie and Bobby wandered away from the simulator, ready to discover what other excitement the water park had to offer. Birdie yawned and stretched his little bunny arms high above his head. "The sun is going to bed, Bobby," he said sleepily. "Should we go home to bed too?" But Bobby had one more thing in mind for their trip to the water park. "We can't go just yet, Birdie," he whispered, his eyes twinkling with excitement. "There's one last thing on our list. The lazy lagoon." He pointed to the entrance of the lazy river ride. Birdie smiled, his whiskers twitching. "Of course," he replied. "We can't go without riding the lazy lagoon." As it turned out, the lazy lagoon was a perfect place to be as the golden sunset painted the sky. Birdie and Bobby each boarded a colorful inflatable donut ring and pushed off from the edge, floating down the lazy lagoon without a care in the world. The gentle current cradled them like a mother's arms, carrying them along and guiding them through the winding paths of the water park's lagoon. The water whispered softly beneath them, crystal clear and soothing. Their inflatable rings glided gracefully across the water's surface, spinning slowly in lazy circles as the bunnies relaxed completely. The sides of the lagoon were like a magical garden, decorated with lush tropical plants whose giant green leaves nodded in the evening breeze. Magnificent tree branches created natural archways over the edges of the riverbanks, dangling delicate pink blossom flowers that seemed to wave hello as the bunnies floated past. Birdie and Bobby reclined in their rings, watching in wonder as stars began to appear in the sky above them, first one, then another, then dozens more. The orange glow of sunset gradually faded away, leaving behind a canvas of deep inky blue. The round silver moon rose slowly but surely, climbing higher and higher until it hung like a nightlight in the sky. Birdie let out another contented yawn and placed his paws behind his head. "This is wonderful," he murmured sleepily. "I could float here all night." Bobby let out a little yawn in response, his eyelids growing heavy. "Oh, me too," he agreed, watching the twinkling stars overhead beam and wink like friendly eyes watching over them. It had been a perfect day at the water park, filled with excitement, adventures, and new friends, but Birdie and Bobby had to admit that this peaceful ride was their absolute favorite part. Against the backdrop of the moonlit sky, the little bunnies drifted along the lazy lagoon, their hearts full of joy. The steady current carried them along the river, weaving round and round the watery paradise. The little bunnies never wanted to leave their cozy floats or for this magical moment to end. The day's excitement had tired their little bodies, but filled their hearts with happiness, so they simply allowed the water to gently carry them, round and round, beneath the sparkling blanket of stars, their eyelids growing heavier with each passing moment. Oh my goodness! I was just telling you about Birdie and Bobby's wonderful water park adventure, and look what I have next. Another magical bedtime story. Let's see. Now I'm going to tell you about a very special story called Turtle Island. Are you comfy? Do you have your favorite stuffed animal? Perfect! Kit had lived in Bangkok her entire life. At almost 8 years and 7 months, she'd known only the pulsing heart of the city. Her parents had moved there long before she was born, settling into a top-floor apartment that overlooked the vibrant tapestry of urban life below. It was in this apartment, with its panoramic views of the bustling metropolis, that both Kit and her little sister So had entered the world. Life in Bangkok was a symphony of sounds and colors. From sunrise to sunset, the streets hummed with activity, pedestrians calling to one another, cars zooming past, and the distinctive puttering of tuk-tuks navigating the crowded roads. The buses were always packed, the subway cars steamy with heat, and boats glided along the winding Chao Phraya River, carrying passengers to their destinations. On weekends, sprawling markets transformed the city into labyrinths of commerce, where vendors sold fresh fruit and shoppers bargained for the best prices. The only peaceful respite Kit knew was a temple her parents occasionally visited. There, cool breezes drifted through open windows, gently stirring the delicate petals of flowers laid reverently at the feet of the big Buddha. Yet despite her love for Bangkok's endless energy, Kit's heart yearned for something different. She dreamed of visiting one of the islands that dotted the coastline. She and So would spend hours poring over books and watching documentaries about these paradise spots, with their pristine beaches, crystal clear waters, and vibrant marine life. What captivated the sisters most was snorkeling. In their living room, they would pretend to explore underwater worlds, wearing their swimming goggles and mimicking the movements of swimmers. "Look, an angelfish!" Kit would exclaim, pointing toward the sofa. They would pause and stare as if truly seeing the colorful creature. "Look, a clownfish!" Or "There's a barracuda!" But their favorite imaginary sighting was always the same. "Look, a turtle!" The sisters were completely enchanted by turtles. They adored everything about them: the intricate patterns on their shells, the way their heads and legs extended from their protective homes, their wise, slow blinks, and their elegant swimming through turquoise waters. More than anything in the world, Kit longed to see a real turtle swimming in its natural habitat. So when her parents announced one morning that they were planning a vacation to an island where the family could go snorkeling, Kit could barely contain her excitement. "Oh, Mama! Oh, Papa!" she cried, hugging each parent tightly. "Thank you! Thank you! But where are we going?" Kit's father unfolded a map and pointed to a tiny green speck in the sea off the mainland coast. "Just here," he said. "Turtle Island." He explained that the island earned its name partly because of its shape, which Kit could see for herself when she looked closely at the map. There was indeed a larger section that resembled a turtle's body connected to a smaller portion that looked like its head. But that's not the only reason. her father continued with a knowing smile. It's also called Turtle Island because the coves and coral reefs around it are famous gathering places for families of turtles. If you're very lucky, you might spot one. Kit and So squeezed each other's hands, their eyes wide with anticipation. They could hardly wait for their adventure to begin. When the day finally arrived, they woke with the dawn, shouldered their backpacks, and set off with their parents to the train station. The journey was long for hours by train, followed by a boat ride across the deep blue ocean. Kit and So stood at the bow, feeling the sea spray leave tiny salt crystals in their hair as they watched for their destination. They were the first to spot it at first, just a dark dot on the horizon that gradually grew larger and more detailed. Soon they could make out jungle-covered hills, strips of white sand beaches, and clusters of small buildings. Turtle Island, they gasped in unison. That's it, their mother confirmed, smiling at their enthusiasm. The moment they disembarked, Kit and So were eager to rush straight to the beach with their new snorkeling masks. But their parents gently reminded them of the need for patience. Good things come to those who wait, their father said, reciting one of his favorite proverbs. Kit nodded reluctantly. Deep down, she knew he was right even if she didn't want to admit it. We'll go to the beach soon, her father promised with a gentle smile. But first, let's get settled. They carried their bags to their cozy beachfront room, quickly changing into colorful beach attire. With eager hearts, the family strolled through the little town, where delicious aromas wafted from nearby restaurants. I think we need some fuel for our adventure, their mother suggested, guiding them to a charming open-air restaurant. The meal was a feast for the senses. Steaming plates of noodles twirled like edible ribbons. Fragrant curries painted their bowls with vibrant colors, and mountains of fluffy rice stood like tiny white islands on their plates. Kit and So savored every delicious bite until their tummies felt warm and content. When the last grain of rice had disappeared, the sisters exchanged a glance before turning to their parents with their most irresistible puppy dog eyes. Can we go snorkeling now, please? They asked in perfect unison, their voices sweet as honey. Their parents laughed, the sound mingling with a gentle island breeze. Yes, their mother replied, affectionately ruffling first Kit's and then So's hair. We can go snorkeling now. With excited squeals, they gathered their belongings and practically skipped down to the beach. The sand felt like powdered sugar beneath Kit's feet, pale and impossibly soft. She wiggled her toes deeper, giggling at the sensation. It's like walking on a cloud, she whispered to So. Sea almond trees dotted the shoreline, their branches reaching out over the water like protective arms, creating pools of dappled shade on the golden sand. Above them, the sun hung like a bright golden coin in the sky, its light dancing across the water in 1,000 tiny sparkles. Their father carefully arranged their towels on a perfect spot of sand and produced a bottle of sunscreen. Safety first, he announced, helping them apply another protective layer. We don't want any sunburns spoiling our fun. Finally, the moment arrived. Kit and So snapped on their snorkeling masks with practiced movements. So added her bright blue armbands, as she wasn't quite as confident a swimmer as her sister. They shared an excited glance, a silent conversation between siblings before racing toward the inviting turquoise sea. The water welcomed them with a warm embrace, splish splashing around their knees as they ran deeper. Kit took a deep breath and dove in, feeling her body instantly become weightless. It was magical, like she had left Earth entirely and was floating through a beautiful blue universe. The world above disappeared, replaced by the gentle gurgling symphony of the ocean. Kit turned to see So gliding into the water behind her, her little sister's eyes wide with wonder behind her mask. Kit motioned with her hand. "Come on, let's explore." Together, they swam further from shore. Beneath them, Kit watched the sandy bottom gradually slope away, as if they were gliding down an underwater hill. Large beige and gray rocks lay half buried in the seabed like sleeping giants. Once, Kit even spotted a bright red crab with dancing pincers scuttling from one rocky hideaway to another. Then, the seabed transformed. Sand gave way to an underwater wonderland. Coral stretched out beneath them like a magical, alien forest. At first glance, it appeared to be pale, lifeless rock, but as they drew closer, Kit saw it was teeming with vibrant life. Orange, pink, and purple coral flowers opened and closed in a slow, hypnotic dance. Silvery bubbles collected on the coral's surface, rising up through the water like tiny underwater stars. And oh, the fish of every imaginable color darted around the coral playground, some striped black and white like tiny zebras, others an electric blue and flat as dinner plates, and still others long and thin with pointed, pinprick noses. Kit and So pointed excitedly to each discovery, their gestures animated in the weightless world. They floated effortlessly, cradled by the gentle ocean currents, like being held in the warm palm of Mother Nature herself. At one magical moment, Kit waved So over and pointed downward. There, nestled in the coral, was a dark orange octopus watching them with intelligent eyes. It waved its tentacles in what seemed like a friendly greeting before releasing a small cloud of ink that trailed through the water like midnight-colored smoke. So returned the favor moments later, calling Kit over to where a bright red lobster was making its deliberate way across the ocean floor. Clickety-clack went its claws as it moved with purpose to some important lobster destination. The underwater safari continued until their fingers became wrinkled and the sun began its westward journey. When they finally returned to shore, Kit was surprised to realize she hadn't felt disappointed about not seeing a turtle. "It's okay," Kit said, wrapping a fluffy towel around her shoulders. "There's plenty more time to see a turtle," So nodded in agreement, her wet hair plastered to her forehead. "Yes," she said with childlike optimism, "hopefully we'll see one tomorrow." The next day brought another snorkeling adventure filled with colorful discoveries, impressive silvery barracudas gliding like underwater arrows, and clever stonefish that perfectly camouflaged themselves among the rocks until a slight movement gave away their secret. But still, no turtles appeared. That evening over dinner, Kit and So confessed their lingering hope to their parents. "We're afraid we might leave Turtle Island without ever seeing a turtle," Kit admitted. "It wouldn't be so bad," she added quickly, "because we've had such a wonderful time on this amazing island and seen so many other weird and wonderful fish. But we really do wish we could see a turtle," So chimed in softly. "Because turtles are our favorites." Their mother gave them a loving smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. "Perhaps you'll have better luck tomorrow," she suggested. Tomorrow was their final day on Turtle Island. Kit and So woke with the sun, determined to make every moment count. They built elaborate sand castles with moats and towers, sipped sweet coconut water straight from the coconuts, and for lunch, they savored sticky rice with juicy mangoes purchased from a beachside stall. And of course, they went snorkeling one last time, hearts full of hope for their elusive show friends. The crystal waters sparkled like diamonds as Kit and So glided through the sea, their eyes wide behind their masks. Colorful fish darted between coral formations as sunlight filtered through the turquoise depths. The sisters explored every nook and cranny of the underwater paradise, determined to find a turtle on their final day. Maybe we'll find one near that small island, Kit suggested, pointing to a grassy rock formation offshore. So nodded eagerly. Let's go! They swam with renewed energy, slicing through the gentle waves until they reached the tiny island. Despite their thorough search, not a single turtle appeared. With a sigh of disappointment, Kit pulled herself up onto the sun-warmed rock, removing her snorkel mask. So joined her, water cascading from her hair as she settled beside her sister. Their legs dangled over the edge as they caught their breath, gazing back at the beach where their parents stood watching tiny figures in the distance. Oh dear, So said with a dejected pout. We are not going to see a turtle, are we? Kit shook her head sadly. I don't think so. I really thought today would be the day. So did I, So whispered. Kit managed a small smile. But we've seen so many other amazing things, haven't we? We should be grateful for that. They both nodded, truly happy for the wonders they had witnessed, yet still unable to shake their disappointment about missing the turtles. Both feelings existed side by side in their hearts. Kit opened her mouth to share this thought when something extraordinary happened. The rock beneath them shifted. At first, Kit wondered if she had imagined it. She glanced at So, whose wide eyes mirrored her own surprise. Did you feel that? Kit whispered. Before So could answer, the rock moved again, tipping gently to one side before gliding forward through the water. It wasn't anchored to the seabed at all but floating freely on the surface. So clutched Kit's arm. Is this rock alive? She asked, voice trembling with excitement and uncertainty. As if in answer, a large head emerged from the front of the rock, turning slowly to face them. Ancient eyes blinked kindly at the sisters as realization dawned on Kit. We're sitting on a turtle, she gasped. A giant turtle. Whoa, So whispered in awe. Woe to you too, replied the turtle in a deep, gentle voice. Kit nearly tumbled off in surprise. You can talk! The turtle's mouth curved into what could only be described as a smile. Oh yes, is that so surprising? You're a tiny human, yet I see you can talk too. Kit couldn't help but laugh as her shock gave way to bubbling excitement. After days of searching, they had not only found a turtle but a magical talking one. Do you have a name? She asked. Oh, I sure do, the turtle replied. I'm Ivan, and you are? After introductions and Kit's hurried apology for climbing onto his back, Ivan chuckled. It's no problem at all. I do look rather like a small island, don't I? I only revealed myself because I overheard your disappointment about not seeing turtles on Turtle Island. And well, he added with a wink, I just can't let anyone down. Ivan's eyes twinkled. Would you like a tour of the ocean? You can stay right where you are, and I'll show you wonders you've never imagined. Oh yes, please, So exclaimed. We'd love to. Kit agreed, But we should ask our parents first. Of course. Ivan nodded wisely. They would worry otherwise. He gracefully swam toward shore with the girls perched on his shell. Their parents' startled expressions quickly softened as Kit and So waved excitedly, explaining their new friend's offer. "There's nothing to worry about," Ivan assured them. "I've known these waters for almost 120 years. Your daughters will be perfectly safe." With their parents' permission granted, Ivan turned back toward the open sea. "You're 120 years old?" So asked, voice filled with wonder. "Almost," Ivan replied, "and that's not even very old for a giant turtle like me. We can live a very long time." He paused. "Now, are you ready for an adventure?" The sisters nodded eagerly. "Then hold on tight." Suddenly they were gliding through the waves with astonishing speed, the ocean breeze whipping their hair into dancing tendrils. Spray from Ivan's shell created a fine, salty mist around them. To Kit, it felt 100 million times better than the boat ride from the mainland. They were in the middle of the vast ocean, riding on the back of a magical turtle. "Just to let you know, we have some friends arriving," Ivan announced. A moment later, a silver flash leaped from the water, arcing directly over them a flying fish. Then another appeared, and another, until an entire school of flying fish, sparkling like jewels in the sunlight, formed a living rainbow above them. So giggled delightedly as droplets splashed her face. She reached up, trying to touch the magnificent creatures, but they darted playfully out of reach, tails flicking as if teasing her. "Would you fancy taking a dip under the water?" Ivan asked. "Yes, please," they chorused. "Deep breaths, then," he instructed. Kit and So filled their lungs to capacity, gave Ivan a thumbs up, and with a splash, they plunged beneath the surface. Ivan moved with such grace and power that they felt like birds in flight. Schools of fish parted around them, their tiny fins waving in what seemed like greeting. The underwater world revealed itself in a tapestry of colors and movement. With a gentle wiggle, Ivan directed their attention forward. Kit and So peered through the crystal water, and the sight before them was so magnificent they nearly gasped away their precious air. There, gathered around a coral-encrusted rock, was an entire family of sea turtles. They moved with elegant precision, their flippers propelling them through the water as they grazed on the coral with tender mouths. It was pure magic, more beautiful than any nature documentary, more wondrous than any picture book. This was real, and they were part of it. When at last Ivan delivered them back to shore where their parents waited, Kit and So couldn't contain their excitement. They threw their arms around him, covering his smooth shell with tiny kisses. "Thank you, Ivan," they whispered, eyes shining with wonder. "That was a dream come true." "You're very welcome, both of you," Ivan replied, his ancient eyes twinkling in the golden afternoon light. "It was a great pleasure to show you the ocean I call home." He gazed out at the horizon for a moment, then added softly, "And I'm very happy that even at my ripe old age, I found new friends. I count myself very lucky for that." Ivan asked how long they would be staying on Turtle Island. Kit's face fell as she explained they were leaving early the next morning. "We wish we could stay forever," she sighed, "but we have to return to our home in Bangkok." Ivan nodded, a wise smile spreading across his weathered face. "Perhaps we shall meet each other again one day. The world has a funny way of bringing good friends back together." Kit and So carried these words with them the next morning as they packed their bags and boarded the boat back to the mainland. They remembered them during the long train journey home, and even when they returned to their high-rise apartment, which looked exactly as they had left it the week before. As days turned into weeks, the memory of Ivan's promise grew fainter. Not that it faded completely, it simply visited them less often. Sometimes, while watching nature documentaries or leafing through science books, they would exchange knowing smiles, silently wondering how their old friend was doing. One golden afternoon, they were strolling along the banks of the Chao Phraya River with their parents. The setting sun transformed the water's surface into dancing flames of orange and gold. Kit and So weren't thinking about Ivan at all, they were debating dinner options instead. "I want Penang curry," Kit declared, while So argued for noodles. Their father suddenly stopped walking. "Hold on a minute," he said, pointing toward the water. "What's that?" Kit followed his gaze and gasped. She grabbed So's hand and hurried to the railings by the riverbank. Peering down into the water, she could hardly believe her eyes. There, swimming majestically up the Chao Phraya River, was Ivan the giant sea turtle. He waved a flippery arm at them, his familiar face breaking into a smile. "Hello," he called up to them. "I've swum all the way from Turtle Island just to visit you. Would you fancy going for another swim?" Kit and So turned to their parents, eyes brimming with hope. "Ivan has come to visit us. Could we go for a swim down the river with him, please?" Their mother looked at Ivan, who bobbed peacefully in the water. With a warm smile, she stroked their hair lovingly. "Go on then," she said, "but not for too long. Perhaps you could invite Ivan around for supper afterward. What do you think?" So called down to Ivan. "We think that sounds perfect," Kit answered for all of them. And then, not waiting a moment longer, they raced down to the riverbank to meet their wise old friend. Ooh, now let me tell you about Coco and Eleanor. This lovely story is by Sarah Kate Howars. Golden sunbeams danced through the window pane of Sleepy Forest Elementary School, creating pools of honey-colored light across the classroom carpet. The pupils sat cross-legged, their curious eyes fixed on Mrs. Mary Feathers. "Children," announced the warm-natured owl, her wing gently draped around the shoulders of a shy newcomer, "I'd like you all to welcome Eleanor, our new friend who has just joined us." "Hello, Eleanor," the class chorused in unison, each student leaning forward slightly to catch a glimpse of their new classmate. Many had never seen an elk before. With her silky caramel coat speckled with cream flecks, Eleanor resembled a delicate mousse, her mahogany eyes gleaming nervously as she surveyed the room. "Eleanor has come a very long way to join our school," Mrs. Feathers continued. "Perhaps you'd like to tell everyone where you're from?" The baby elk's velvet nose wrinkled as she shifted on her slender hooves. Her pointy ears twitched atop her delicate head as she gathered her courage. From the front row, Coco offered an encouraging smile. He remembered how frightening it felt to be the new student in a sea of unfamiliar faces. Catching Coco's warm gaze, Eleanor's racing heart began to calm. There was something kind and reassuring about the friendly face smiling up at her. Taking a deep breath, she finally spoke. "I've moved here from Sweden," she announced, her voice growing steadier with each word. "Ooh!" exclaimed Prickles the Hedgehog, bouncing with excitement. "I've always wanted to visit Sweden. Do you like cinnamon buns, Eleanor?" Eleanor glanced at the enthusiastic hedgehog sitting beside Coco, a bemused expression crossing her face. "They're okay, I suppose," she replied with a small shrug. "But cardamom ones are much nicer." "Really?" Prickles' mouth formed a perfect circle, like a polo mint. He'd never even heard of cardamom buns before. "Oh yes, me too," he mumbled, hoping he sounded convincing. "Much nicer." Mrs. Feathers smiled and gestured for the children to make room on the carpet. Coco and Prickles shuffled aside as Eleanor gracefully settled beside them, tucking her legs beneath her body. When she smiled at Coco, her eyes were as warm as melted chocolate. A rosy blush crept across his cheeks. Eleanor was indeed very pretty. Noticing Prickles' curious glance, Coco quickly turned his attention back to Mrs. Feathers, his telltale red cheeks giving him away. At break time, Alice the alpaca bounded over to Eleanor, questions bubbling from her like a fountain. "What's Sweden like? Is it terribly cold? Is it true that it gets dark at 3 in the afternoon?" As a crowd gathered around her, Eleanor shook her head. "Only in winter. In summer, it stays light almost all night long." "Wow," Alice sighed dreamily. "That means you could stay up super late if you wanted to." "You've got such beautiful fur," Daphne the duckling observed admiringly. "It's so shiny." A ripple of pink curled around Eleanor's cheeks as she smiled. "Thank you. Your feathers are lovely too," Daphne honked with laughter. "Don't be silly. I'm just a duckling. My feathers are boring and gray. But just wait until I'm grown up. I'll have the most fabulous feathers in all of Sleepy Forest." With theatrical flair, Daphne stretched her wings and paraded around the playground like royalty, swishing her feathers dramatically. Her classmates cheered her on, delighted by her confidence. As they headed back to class for the final lesson, Coco fell into step beside Eleanor. When their eyes met, she quickly looked down at the ground, a shy smile playing on her lips. Coco opened his mouth to speak, but discovered his tongue had turned to sandpaper. His mind went blank, not a single clever thought to be found. Swallowing hard, he gnawed nervously on his bottom lip while Eleanor peeked at him through her long, delicate eyelashes. "What are you doing after school?" he finally managed to ask, his voice echoing oddly loud in the quiet summer afternoon. Eleanor giggled softly, her hooves dancing little patterns in the dusty paths. "Well," she replied, "it's Midsummer today. You see, Midsummer." "What's that?" Coco asked innocently. Eleanor stopped in her tracks, her mouth falling open in genuine surprise. "Don't tell me you've never heard of Midsummer," she exclaimed, her voice rising with disbelief. Coco's cheeks blazed crimson, the tips of his ears burning with embarrassment. Well, no," he admitted apologetically. "Sorry." Eleanor could hardly believe her ears. Midsummer wasn't just an important celebration in Sweden, it was her absolute favorite day of the year. "Goodness me," she declared, eyes wide. "Then you simply must come to my house after school. We're having a traditional midsummer celebration. You see, back in Sweden, I always invited a friend from school, and now," her voice grew softer, "well, I don't have any friends yet. Unless," She gazed at Coco hopefully, her eyes shining with possibility. Coco's face transformed with the most magnificent smile, spreading across his features like sunshine after rain. "I'll be your friend," he grinned warmly. "That is, if you want me to be." Eleanor nodded, happiness settling across her delicate features like morning dew. "Then it's settled. You'll come to my house after school." She skipped merrily toward the classroom, but just as she reached the doorway, she paused and glanced back over her shoulder. "Oh, Coco, I almost forgot you know how to dance around a maple, right?" Coco froze. Dancing wasn't exactly his strong suit. Kara always teased that he had 2 left feet and he'd never even heard of a maple before. But he was so eager to accept Eleanor's invitation that he found himself nodding enthusiastically. "Oh yes," he replied with false confidence. "Easy peasy lemon squeezy." Eleanor clapped her hooves together with delight. "Wonderful," she exclaimed before disappearing through the doorway. Coco's tummy began to feel peculiar, as if he'd swallowed a dragonfly whole. The prospect of dancing in front of Eleanor made him uneasy, and he worried about telling his mother, who would be waiting at the school gates as usual. He wasn't typically allowed to visit friends' houses without advance notice, but he couldn't possibly miss this opportunity, not when he had the chance to experience a real midsummer party. From Eleanor's excitement, he knew it would be truly magical. So he pushed his worries to the deepest corner of his mind and stepped into the classroom, brimming with anticipation for the adventures that awaited him. When the final bell rang, students tumbled excitedly out of the school gates. Eleanor grasped Coco's paw, her eyes sparkling with joy. "Come on," she coaxed. "Let's go find my family." "Oh, yes. Well, the thing is," Coco hesitated, not wanting to disappoint his new friend. "What is it?" Eleanor stopped abruptly, her eyes clouding with concern. "Don't you want to come anymore?" "Oh, I do," Coco protested earnestly, his cheeks warming again. "I really do. It's just, I need to ask my mom if it's okay first." Eleanor threw back her head and laughed heartily. "Oh, Coco, you silly Billy. Of course you need to ask permission." Coco shuffled his feet, feeling rather foolish. "Ha! Okay, good. I just thought you might think it was a bit, babyish." Eleanor smiled kindly. "Let's go find our parents and introduce them. I'm sure that will make your mom feel better about it." Coco beamed. "That sounds like a wonderful plan, Eleanor." His eyes scanned the crowd of waiting parents until he spotted his mother chatting with an unfamiliar couple to rabbits. One was fur as white as fresh snowfall. The other was charcoal gray fur. "There they are. Mom, Dad!" Eleanor dashed across the playground, her little hooves clattering as she raced toward the rabbits and threw herself into their welcoming arms. Eleanor, how was your first day at school?" asked the Snow-White Bunny, her whiskers fluttering as she smiled down at her daughter. "Great! Look, here's my new friend, Coco." Coco approached shyly, smiling up at his own mother. "Coco, these are our new neighbors who've just moved from Sweden, Birgit the bunny and Rasmus the rabbit. And I see you've already met Eleanor the baby elk." Coco and Eleanor exchanged astonished glances. Not only were they classmates, but neighbors too. How wonderfully lucky. "Hello, Coco's mom," Eleanor said politely. I wondered if it might be okay if Coco came to play this afternoon and stayed for tea. You see, it's midsummer, and we need extras for the maple dance. Coco's mother glanced down at her son quizzically. Coco blinked back innocently. Please, Mom, if it's okay with you? His mother smiled, her cheeks dimpling. If it's all right with Eleanor's parents, then it's all right with me. But I'll come pick you up at p.m. sharp. It is a school night. After all, the Bunnies assured Coco's mother it would be their pleasure to have Coco join their midsummer celebration. And so they made their way down the path and into the forest, the adults chatting together while Coco and Eleanor skipped ahead. Eleanor's house was just a few doors down from Coco's cozy cabin. It had walls the color of magnolia blossoms and a sloping red roof. Here we are, announced Bridget cheerfully, swinging open the little wooden gate to reveal a front garden bursting with wildflowers in full bloom. Come on in, Coco. Coco looked up at his mother, who nodded encouragingly. I will bring Kira along when I pick you up later. Enjoy yourself, Coco. Who's Kira? Eleanor asked curiously. She's my baby sister, explained Coco, his voice growing warm and affectionate as it always did when he spoke about his younger sibling. Eleanor smiled wistfully. You're so lucky, Coco. I've always wanted a sister. I can't wait to meet her. Coco's heart danced with contentment. Bye, Mom, he called, following Eleanor down the garden path between brightly colored dahlias and towering sunflowers. Rasmus hopped onto the front porch and beamed down at the children, his eyes twinkling. Are you all ready for some midsummer magic? He asked playfully. Yes, they chorused eagerly. Bridget bounded forward to join her husband. First up, she announced, we need to dress the maple. Eleanor gave an excited little squeak. That means we need armfuls and armfuls of foliage, wild ferns, leaves, branches, blossoms, flowers. You name it. Let's all take a basket and gather as much as we can carry from the forest floor, Bridget said cheerfully, handing Coco a little wicker basket with a blue bow adorning the front. Coco's eyes lit up at the sight of the blue ribbon. It was his favorite color, after all. Meanwhile, Eleanor had already scooped up her own basket. A bright ribbon the color of satsumas trailing elegantly from the handle. Is orange your favorite color, Eleanor? Coco asked, falling into step beside her as they wandered down the path and out into the fringes of the forest. Eleanor nodded enthusiastically. Yep, it reminds me of the sunset. Coco smiled warmly. What a lovely image, amber, apricot, and mandarin sunbeams settling on the horizon in a sizzling haze. But there was no time to lose to daydreaming. Eleanor was already casting an eager eye across the forest floor, expertly scooping bilberry branches and bundles of blossom into her basket. Come on, Coco, she insisted, pressing wispy tufts of cotton grass into his palm. We need to gather the greenery. Coco nodded and began to extend an arm toward a nearby bush awash with emerald leaves and delicate lilac flowers. Eleanor quickly placed a gentle hoof on his arm. Oh, sorry, Coco, she said solemnly. I forgot to tell you the most important rule. You must only gather from the forest floor. We don't want to take anything that's still growing, so no pinching anything that's still attached to its source, okay? Coco's paw wavered. The lilac flowers looked so tempting, shaking softly in the gentle breath of the evening breeze. But Eleanor was right. He shouldn't pick something that was still growing. Joining his friend, he began to scan the forest floor carefully. Suddenly, his eyes alighted on a beautiful garland of elderflower. "Look," he whispered excitedly, holding the spindly branch up to the light so that golden sunlight splayed through the pale petals like a natural kaleidoscope. Eleanor helped Coco stow the elderflower carefully in his basket. "That's a great find, Coco. It will look so pretty on the maypole." Coco hesitated. "Eleanor," he began, but his friend had already bent down to pick up more cotton grass with her teeth. "What is it, Coco?" she asked through a mouthful of fluffy white tufts. Well, I just wondered. What is a maypole?" Eleanor began to cough and splutter, spitting out the cotton grass with an indignant hiccup. "Coco, I forgot this is your very first midsummer. Let's go back to the garden. I'll show you what a maypole is. Come on!" With baskets now overflowing with greenery, Coco and Eleanor hurried back, weaving their way through the tree trunks until they reached Eleanor's front gate. "Eleanor, Coco," Bridget's voice rang out sweetly from the garden. "Coming," answered Eleanor, prancing around to the back of the house with Coco following dutifully behind. As they made their way across the neatly manicured lawn, Coco's breath caught in his throat. The little back garden was overflowing with strawberry bushes. Little droplets of ruby red fruit hung like Christmas baubles, sparkling and gleaming amidst the lush green leaves. Eleanor caught Coco admiring the strawberries and laughed melodically. "We'll have some later," she whispered with gleeful anticipation. "They are perfectly ripe and so sweet, like sherbet." In the center of the garden, Bridget and Rasmus stood proudly beside a tall pole adorned with garlands and wreaths trailing down from its uppermost point. Eleanor gestured toward it with a flourish. "The maypole," she announced, trotting over and gazing up at the magnificent structure. "Now we add our greenery, Coco. It symbolizes new life and growth." And so, with mounting excitement, Eleanor and Coco set to work attaching their forest findings onto the maypole, with a little help from her parents. Soon, the maypole was gloriously dressed with leaves, flowers, stems, vines, blossoms, berries, herbs, petals, twigs, branches, and other beautiful scraps of foliage, transforming it into a celebration of summer's bounty. They stood back to admire their creation, breathing heavily from their efforts. The decorated pole stood tall and magnificent against the evening sky. "It looks absolutely magical," exclaimed Coco, his eyes wide with wonder. "Is it time to dance now?" he asked, a hint of nervousness in his voice as his knees trembled slightly. Eleanor laughed softly, her eyes twinkling. "Oh no, not yet. First comes the most delicious part. It's time for the midsummer picnic." Coco's belly rumbled in response, reminding him how hungry he was after their forest adventure. "What do you eat at a midsummer picnic?" he asked curiously, unconsciously licking his lips in anticipation. "Come see for yourself." Eleanor tugged on her friend's paw, leading him across the garden to a sunny patch of lawn where a checkered blanket was spread out invitingly. The picnic rug was a vision of summer abundance, slices of dark rye bread stacked on delicate china plates, tender slices of fresh salmon sprinkled with fragrant dill, bowls of buttery potatoes steaming gently, and platters piled high with ruby red strawberries, their surfaces dotted with tiny yellow seeds. "What's that?" asked Coco, pointing curiously at a plate containing something silvery and glistening. "My absolute favorite pickled herring," Eleanor declared, helping herself to a generous portion atop a slice of seeded rye bread. The family settled comfortably on the blanket and began enjoying their feast with enthusiastic appetites. Though Coco was hesitant to try the pickled herring, he happily devoured a small mountain of strawberries while Rasmus poured him a glass of homemade lemonade that danced playfully on his taste buds. "Would you like to try a cardamom bun, Coco?" Bridget asked, offering him a tray of freshly baked pastries that filled the air with sweet, spicy fragrance. Coco reached out eagerly and took a bite of the golden swirl. He murmured appreciatively, savoring the delicate floral taste that melted on his tongue. "Prickles would never believe I tried this." After they had finished their delicious meal, they stretched out contentedly on the picnic rug, gazing upward at the summer sky. Fluffy clouds drifted lazily overhead like dandelion seeds, while the gentle summer breeze caressed their fur like tender fingertips. Rasmus picked up his guitar and began strumming a gentle melody that seemed to dance with the evening light. Eleanor jumped to her feet with newfound energy. "Time to dance," she announced cheerfully. Coco gulped nervously. "I'm actually feeling a little bit full," he protested as Eleanor pulled him by the paw toward the towering maple. "Don't be silly, Coco," she laughed. "You'll be fine. Follow me." The four of them formed a circle around the maple, joining hands with warm smiles. Led by Eleanor, they began to move in a graceful pattern, first skipping lightly to the left, then swishing rhythmically to the right. Coco's face scrunched with concentration, but to his surprise, his feet seemed to know exactly what to do. He found himself tapping and stepping in perfect harmony with the others, not missing a single beat. "You're a natural," Eleanor laughed with delight, twirling elegantly under his arm like a tiny ballerina. Around and around the beautiful maple they danced, while the family sang a sweet folk song that floated on the evening air. Welcome the summertime bringing new life. Welcome the strawberries bursting so ripe. Welcome the wildflowers bringing cheer. Welcome midsummer every year. As twilight deepened around them, Rasmus continued playing gentle melodies on his guitar while Bridget lit a cozy campfire that glowed golden against the gathering dusk, its warm light keeping the evening chill at bay. As twilight fell upon the sleepy forest, Eleanor gathered a long branch from the leftover piles of foliage. With eyes twinkling like the emerging stars, she and Coco took turns toasting fluffy marshmallows in the glowing embers of the fire. "Thank you for inviting me to your midsummer celebration." Coco smiled shyly at his new friend, his voice soft and sincere. "I've had the most magical time." Eleanor's face lit up with a warm smile. "You're welcome, Coco. You were the perfect dance partner. I'm so glad you could join us." She yawned, her eyelids growing heavy as a bonfire crackled and danced before them. "Oh my, that dancing has really worn me out." With a contented sigh, Eleanor snuggled into her mother's soft, fluffy fur. Bridget and Rasmus exchanged knowing glances as they smiled down at their daughter. "You've had quite a big day, Nora," Bridget said gently, stroking her daughter's brow with tender paws. "Starting at a new school isn't an easy thing to do, and you've managed to make a friend already," added Rasmus with a proud smile, glancing warmly at Coco. Coco nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, you have, I am," he exclaimed, his words tumbling over each other in excitement. Eleanor reached out, slipping her hand into Coco's paw and squeezing it softly. "I am too," she whispered, her voice sleepy but sincere. "Gladly your friend." Just then, a friendly voice drifted over the hedgerow like a butterfly on the evening breeze. "Coco," another voice joined in the chorus, soft and sweet like syrup. "Kira." Coco's face brightened with joy. The evening had flown by so quickly. He couldn't believe it was already time to head home. He watched with a smile as Kira tottered down the garden path, her eyes growing wide with wonder as she took in the scene, the majestic maple standing tall against the twilight sky, the swaths of wildflowers nodding their colorful heads, and the campfire crackling merrily. "Wow," she breathed, awestruck by the enchanting garden. "Hello, Kira," Eleanor murmured sleepily, fighting to keep her heavy eyelids open. "I'm Eleanor. I just moved here from Sweden. Coco's told me all about you. You'll have to come and play next time too." Kira's eyes sparkled with delight, reflecting the dancing firelight. "I'd love to," she replied softly. "Come on, you too," their mother called gently. "It's getting late, and Eleanor looks ever so tired." It was true. Eleanor was tucked tightly against her mother's side, basking in the warmth of the fireside, her eyes now drooping drowsily as she fought against sleep's gentle pull. "Bye, Eleanor," said Coco, waving a paw. "Thanks for having me," he added politely, nodding at Eleanor's parents. "I loved the midsummer party, the maple, the dancing, the picnic." His words were interrupted by a big, sleepy yawn. "Come on, sleepyhead," his mother said fondly. "Time to get you all tucked up." Coco took hold of Kira's paw, and they slowly made their way back up the garden path, their shadows stretching long behind them in the fading light. "What's a maple, Coco?" Kira looked up at her big brother with curious eyes. Coco smiled down at her. "Just you wait, Kira. Let's get into our pajamas and brush our teeth. Then I'll tell you all about it once we're tucked up in bed. I promise." Meanwhile, the flames of the campfire grew tame and subdued, their fierce dance slowing to a gentle waltz. Moonlight spilled into the night sky, showering the maple with sparkling silver sheets, its ribbons swaying gently in the evening breeze, a silent farewell to a magical midsummer evening. "Oh, now we're going on a completely different adventure. This one is called Hector and Sunny's Moonlit Safari by Luke Prendergast. Doesn't that sound so magical? Let's imagine we're going on safari with some super cute puppy friends." The memories of their New York City adventures still danced in Hector the Golden Retriever and Sunny the Spaniel's dreams. Months had passed since that magical holiday, but they could still feel the excitement of packing their bags and heading to the airport with Hector's dad. Whenever Hector's dad playfully asked, "Fancy another holiday?" their tails would wag wildly as they circled the kitchen with enthusiastic barks and yips. Though they made their feelings crystal clear, no actual plans ever seemed to materialize. One sunny afternoon, after spending hours in the garden playing chase your tail until you're dizzy, Hector and Sunny trotted back inside. To their surprise, they discovered Hector's dad pulling suitcases from the storage cupboard, a smile spreading across his face like sunshine. "Guess what, you two? We're going on holiday again," he announced triumphantly. "Sunny, your owner's joining us too. My old friend Sylvie lives in Kenya, and she's invited us for a visit. We're going on safari." "Safari?" Hector and Sunny exchanged puzzled glances. This unfamiliar word tickled their ears, and though they didn't understand its meaning, their hearts fluttered with excitement for the adventure ahead. With wagging tails, they packed their essentials: sunglasses Hector's dad warned about the heat, doggy brushes for their fur, and plenty of chew toys for those rare moments of downtime. That night, they snuggled into their beds, squeezing their eyes shut tight, trying to will sleep to come despite the bubbling anticipation. In their dreams, tiny airplanes zigzagged across a miniature Earth, carrying them to mysterious lands filled with adventure. The journey took nearly 10 hours, despite leaving before dawn, when the sun was still hiding beneath the horizon. They arrived in Nairobi, Kenya's capital city, in late afternoon. As they stepped off the plane, a wall of heat greeted them, the air thick and vibrating with warmth. At the baggage claim, Hector delighted in grabbing their suitcases by the handles with his teeth, proudly dragging them off the giant conveyor belt. With everything collected, they hopped into a waiting car, ready for their Kenyan adventure to begin. "We're heading for a town about an hour away called Nairobi," Hector's dad informed them, "where my friend Sylvie lives. We'll be driving through the Great Rift Valley," Hector's dad added from the front seat. Hector and Sunny exchanged curious glances. "The Great Rift Valley? What's that?" they wondered. They soon discovered the answer. The car left the busy road and began climbing a steep hill. When they reached the summit, an incredible sight unfolded before them. The land on the other side plunged dramatically into the most enormous valley they could possibly imagine, stretching endlessly in all directions. A vast green savanna sprawled beside them. The landscape was dotted with solitary mountains, flat-topped hills, and clusters of trees. In the distance, they spotted a storm, a dark mass of clouds with curtains of rain cascading down, drifting gracefully on the wind through the valley. The Great Rift Valley, Sunny's mom explained, was formed millions of years ago when tectonic plates deep beneath Earth's surface shifted apart. This movement triggered earthquakes and volcanoes, creating the mountains you see today and carving out this massive valley. She continued, "It extends all the way from Egypt in the north to Mozambique in the south. Over time, it has flourished with trees and grasslands, becoming home to some of the world's most magnificent wildlife, which is precisely why we've come here on safari." As they drove along, Hector and Sunny occasionally glimpsed tiny shapes moving across the valley floor, though they were too distant to identify clearly. "Here we are," announced Hector's dad as they pulled up to a house on the outskirts of town. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of lilac adorned with fluffy pink clouds. When Hector and Sunny hopped out of the car, they were greeted by the melodious sounds of insects buzzing in the lush leafy trees surrounding the house. A woman wearing blue jeans and a white t-shirt emerged from the doorway. This must be Sylvie. She welcomed Sunny's mom and Hector's dad with warm hugs. Then, from behind her appeared a creature unlike any Hector or Sunny had ever encountered. She resembled a weasel or perhaps an otter, but remarkably, she walked upright on her two hind legs. "Hello there," she said cheerfully, waving a paw at the dogs. "I'm Mira the meerkat. I live here with Sylvie. You must be Hector and Sunny." The dogs politely introduced themselves, and Mira responded with equal friendliness. Their owners had already ascended the steps to the veranda that encircled Sylvie's house and disappeared inside, leaving the door ajar behind them. Instead of following the humans indoors, Mira flashed the two dogs a mischievous grin. "I know it's almost nightfall," she said, "but since it's your first evening in Kenya, would you two like to join me on a little adventure?" Hector and Sunny's ears perked up immediately. Neither could ever resist the allure of an adventure. "What kind of adventure?" Sunny inquired curiously. "Have you ever heard of Lake Naivasha?" Mira asked. Sunny shook her head and glanced questioningly at Hector, who also shook his head. "No, what's that?" they replied in unison. "Lake Naivasha is what gives this town its name," Mira explained enthusiastically. "It's an enormous lake, as vast as a sea, and not far from here at all. We could take a stroll there. There are so many magnificent sights to see and fascinating animals to meet," she concluded with a playful wink and a twitch of her nose. "What do you say?" Mira asked, her eyes twinkling with adventure. "We say yes," Hector and Sunny answered in unison, tails wagging with excitement. Mira snapped her fingers with a magical flourish, and suddenly time seemed to stand still for their owners. "A little trick of mine," she winked. "They won't even notice we're gone." Sunny exchanged a knowing glance with Hector. This meerkat reminded her of Sydney the squirrel from their previous adventures, both small creatures with extraordinary powers. "This way," Mira beckoned with her little black paw, leading them through a maze of dense hedges until they emerged into a vast, open field. The meadow stretched before them, dotted with clusters of magnificent trees, their yellow trunks bent at curious angles, as if they were bowing to invisible forces. Above, their branches spread into flat canopies of leaves, resembling giant umbrellas against the darkening sky. "What are those trees called?" Hector asked, tilting his head curiously. "We don't have anything like them back home. Those are acacia trees," Mira explained. "They're iconic here in Kenya, but I suppose the trees in your country would seem just as strange to me." Hector considered this with a thoughtful frown before nodding. He'd never really thought about how different the natural world could be across the globe. As they strode toward a particularly impressive group of acacias, Sunny suddenly froze. She grabbed Hector's fur with her paw, her eyes wide. "What's the matter?" Hector asked, concerned. "Well, the thing is," Sunny stammered, her voice trembling slightly, "do countries in Kenya move?" Hector wrinkled his nose in confusion. "What do you mean? Why would you ask something like that?" "Because," Sunny whispered, pointing ahead, "that tree there, it's moving." Hector followed her gaze and realized she was right. One of the trees had uprooted itself and was ambling with a rolling gait toward another tree nearby. Mira burst into peals of delighted laughter. No, 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 that's not a tree, that's a giraffe. But you're right, she added kindly. From a distance, their long necks and patterned coats do resemble acacia trees quite remarkably. Sunny, recovering from her momentary fright, smiled sheepishly. That's some impressive camouflage. Can we meet the giraffe? We sure can, Mira replied, leading them toward the towering creature. The giraffe was now stretching its extraordinarily long neck to reach the tender leaves at the top of an acacia. Mira cleared her throat politely and called out, "Hey there, Twiga!" From his lofty height, the giraffe glanced down at the tiny trio. He continued methodically chewing a leaf, his jaw moving in a circular motion. After a great gulp, Hector was fascinated to watch the leaf's journey all the way down that incredible neck. The giraffe spoke. "Oh, hello, Mira. I didn't spot you down there," he said in a gentle, rumbling voice. "I suppose my eyesight isn't what it used to be." Mira gestured toward the darkening sky. "It's just getting a bit dusky." Twiga blinked slowly at the twilight sky and nodded. "You're right. That must be it." His gaze shifted curiously. "And who might these two be?" "These are my new friends from England," Mira explained proudly. "Hector and Sunny." The dogs introduced themselves politely, explaining that despite all their exciting travels, they'd never had the pleasure of meeting a giraffe before. Twiga told them he'd never encountered dogs quite like them either. Jackals, yes, and spotted hyenas, but never any dogs with coats so gleaming and golden as yours. This compliment made Hector and Sunny feel rather special indeed. Then Twiga gazed longingly at a particularly succulent leaf high in the acacia. "I'm trying to reach that leaf," he sighed, "but I just can't quite get to it." To demonstrate, the already tall giraffe rose onto the tips of his hooves, stretched his neck to its full impressive length, and extended his rough, purplish tongue as far as possible, but the leaf remained just out of reach. "See?" he sighed dejectedly. "We can help you with that," Hector offered with an enthusiastic yip. "You can?" Twiga asked, surprise evident in his voice. Hector explained how during an adventure in the Amazon rainforest, they'd befriended a jaguar named Klaus who had taught them the typically feline skill of climbing trees. "Watch this," Hector said proudly. With a graceful leap, he extended his claws and scaled the acacia trunk. In mere moments, he had reached the coveted leaf, plucked it carefully, and dropped it with perfect aim directly into Twiga's waiting mouth. "Wow!" exclaimed Twiga, his eyes wide with amazement as Hector gracefully landed back on the ground. "Thank you so much," the giraffe said gratefully, savoring the delicious leaf. "You're very welcome," Hector replied with a polite bow. Mira turned to Twiga and announced, "I'm going to show our friends Lake Nivisha before it gets completely dark. We should be on our way." With friendly waves, they bid farewell to the giraffe and continued their adventure. The African sky transformed before their eyes, shifting from soft lilac to a deep, velvety blue. All around them, cicadas created a symphony of chirruping sounds that filled the evening air. As they wandered through the meadow, they passed herds of elegant impala and antelope. These beautiful creatures, with their magnificent curved horns, were already settling down for the night, folding their slender legs beneath them and resting their heads. A pair of zebras noticed them passing by and offered greetings with gentle swishes of their striped tails. Finally, they reached their destination. "Look!" Mira whispered excitedly, pointing ahead. There it was, Lake Nivisha, spreading out before them like an enormous mirror. Just as Mira had described, it was immense, a vast, glittering disk of water. The surface rippled gently, creating dancing reflections of the purple clouds that floated overhead. Along the shoreline, small trees bent their branches downward, as if bowing to take a drink from the shimmering waters. In the distance, across the expansive lake, they could make out the dark silhouettes of mountains, standing majestically against the twilight sky. "Welcome to Lake Nivisha," Mira announced proudly, gesturing with her small paw. For a moment, Hector and Sunny stood completely speechless, captivated by the breathtaking view. When they finally found their voices, they told Mira it was one of the most beautiful sights they had ever witnessed in all their travels. "Fancy a swim?" Mira asked with a mischievous glint in her eye. The dogs' tails began wagging enthusiastically. They certainly did. "Come on then," Mira called, scurrying toward the water's edge. "Just keep an eye out for hippos." "Hippos," Sunny repeated nervously. As if on cue, a loud splashing noise erupted from the water. They watched in awe as a massive dark shape rose from beneath the surface. First came enormous nostrils, followed by wrinkled gray skin and two small, beady eyes that regarded them with what seemed like mild annoyance. It was an enormous hippopotamus. The creature gave a tremendous snort that sent water spraying into the air, then opened its mouth in an enormous yawn, revealing rows of impressive teeth. "Yep," Mira said with a laugh. "Hippos, they can be rather grumpy creatures, so it's best to give them plenty of space. Follow me." She led them along the shoreline, away from where the hippo was enjoying its muddy bath in the shallows. "This spot looks perfect," Mira declared when they'd reached a quiet cove. Without hesitation, she performed a graceful little dive and disappeared beneath the silvery surface. Hector and Sunny didn't need any further encouragement. They plunged into the lake after their friend, and soon all three were splashing and swimming joyfully in the warm waters. Mira showed them how she liked to dive down to the lake bottom and run her fingers through the dense, swaying reeds that grew there. In return, Hector and Sunny taught her their favorite swimming technique, doggy paddle, of course, which made the little meerkat giggle with delight. Eventually, they all floated peacefully on their backs, letting the gentle current carry them as they gazed up at the twinkling stars that had begun to appear in the darkening sky. The moon had risen, now a delicate crescent that resembled a smile. Its soft glow spilled down onto the water, transforming the lake into what looked like liquid silver. It was utterly tranquil. Strange, unfamiliar birds called softly in the distance, and the water lapped rhythmically against the shore with a soothing sound. As peaceful as it was, Hector and Sunny soon found themselves yawning. Their exciting day of travel and adventure was catching up with them. "Come on then, you sleepy pups," Mira said gently as she heard their yawns. "Time to get you back home and into bed." They reluctantly climbed out of Lake Nivisha, shook the water from their fur, and began the journey back to Sylvie's house. Night had fully descended now. The acacia trees were merely shadowy outlines that appeared suddenly when they drew near. Occasionally, they would come across a sleeping herd of animals and would have to tiptoe around them with exaggerated care. At last, they reached the edge of the meadow where they could pass through to Sylvie's house. But just as they were walking beneath a particularly large acacia tree, a low, rumbling voice called out to them from above. "Well, good evening there, Hector, Sunny, and Mira." They glanced up, surprised to discover an enormous cat lounging on one of the branches. Her long tail hung down, swaying gently and curling at the tip. "Hello, Lyra," Mira replied. "I didn't see you there." Lyra the leopard gave a leisurely twist of her tail. "That," she purred, "is rather the intention." She explained that leopards were naturally shy and solitary creatures. They preferred to remain hidden, concealed in shadowy places or high in the secret boughs of trees. "But you know," she added thoughtfully, her eyes gleaming in the moonlight, "it's rather peaceful up here. Would you like to come up and join me?" Lyra asked, her golden eyes glinting in the moonlight. "We'd love to," Hector, Sunny, and Mira replied in unison. With graceful movements, they climbed the rough bark of the acacia tree and settled themselves on the sturdy branches beside the leopard. From this height, they could see the nighttime savanna spreading out before them like a vast, shadowy quilt. "You were right," Sunny whispered, gazing at the moonlit landscape. "It's wonderfully peaceful up here." Mira turned to Lyra. "I've just been showing Hector and Sunny around before their proper safari tomorrow." "Safari?" Sunny tilted her head curiously, remembering how Hector's dad had used that same word back home. "What exactly does safari mean?" Lyra's whiskers twitched as she smiled. "Safari is a Swahili word meaning journey," she explained in her melodious voice. "So whenever you're traveling through the savannah, exploring the landscape, you're on safari." Hector and Sunny wagged their tails, delighted to learn the meaning of this new word. To thank Lyra for her wisdom, Hector reached beneath his collar and pulled out a small bag of dog treats he'd tucked away for emergencies. "Would you like to try one?" he offered. He passed the bag around, and soon all four animals were contentedly munching on treats while admiring the enormous pale moon hanging in the night sky like a silver lantern. My, Lyra purred, licking her whiskers appreciatively. "These treats are absolutely scrumptious, some of the most delicious things I've ever tasted. I don't think there's a big cat in all of Kenya who wouldn't enjoy these." "You're very welcome," Hector replied with a doggy smile. They remained in the acacia tree for a while longer, nibbling treats and chatting with their new leopard friend. The night was perfect until Sunny let out an enormous yawn that seemed to stretch her entire face. Taking that as their cue, they said their goodbyes to Lyra and carefully made their way back down the tree. As they walked towards Sylvie's house, their paws felt heavy with tiredness. It had been quite an extraordinary day, flying all the way from England to Kenya and experiencing their very first mini safari. Hector and Sunny couldn't thank Mira enough for showing them around. "The pleasure was all mine," Mira assured them with a warm smile. When they finally returned to Sylvie's house and time unfroze, their human owners noticed their drooping eyelids and sleepy yawns. "The plane journey must have really tired them out," they commented, completely unaware of the nighttime adventure the animals had just enjoyed. As their owners continued chatting, Hector, Sunny, and Mira curled up together on the veranda, embraced by the warm Nivetian night air. Good night, Sunny. Good night, Mira, Hector murmured, stretching his paws and letting out one final yawn. Good night, Hector, Sunny replied softly. Sleep well, both of you, Mira added. Tomorrow we go on a proper adventure safari, so it's important you're well rested. And so the three friends closed their eyes, the sweet scent of honeysuckle drifting over the veranda and the gentle symphony of cicadas serving as their bedtime lullaby. Together, they drifted into a deep and peaceful sleep filled with dreams of the adventures that awaited them. And that's where we'll leave our furry friends tonight, my little sleepyheads. Can you imagine what amazing safari adventures Hector, Sunny, and Mira will have tomorrow? Oh, I think it's time for us to go to sleep too. Remember, just like our animal friends, your dreams can take you on the most wonderful adventures. Thank you for joining me for this cozy bedtime story. Sweet dreams, my little friends. I will see you next time for another magical adventure. Nighty night.